up, gamers? I'm Jason.
And I'm Julie.
And today on Dice & Dragons, we are going to be reviewing Naruto Ninja Arena. This is the first game using the Roll and Clash system designed by Kaedama and Don't Panic Games, and it is published by Japanime Games. Now, this is based on Naruto, so the license is from Viz Media and Shonen Jump. I think I've got everyone named as who's involved with the game, so Julie's going to take it away and tell you more about the game itself, as well as a little disclaimer.
I'm going to start with the disclaimer. This is a review copy, so thank you very much to Jackson at Japanime Games. We appreciate the review copy. We'd like to remind our viewers that our opinion will remain our own. Yes. So this is a competitive game. It is a dice chucking game.
Most definitely.
It is intended for 2 to 6 players, 10 and above. It says it plays in 15 minutes, maybe at the higher player counts, but at the 2-player, I can definitely say, based on our games.
I disagree. When we played it with the standard rules and not the dual rules, it did play in about 15 minutes. So I do think that the box is about right. The dual mode, I agree with you, is significantly longer than the 15-minute playtime, just because of the way the mechanics work. Don't worry, you'll see that in our how to play portion of the video. Now, to tell you what's going on in Naruto Ninja Arena. Well, it is a ninja battle free-for-all, as you will take on the role of your favorite character from the Naruto anime series. Well, those that are in the box. This does include the Genin expansion, so you have a lot of characters to choose from.
10.
Yes. You will then be chucking dice, trying to trigger abilities. When you trigger abilities, you will then be able to push damage cubes to other players. Those damage cubes will stay in front of the player until one person triggers their power. At that point, you have to touch the Uzumaki tile, which will be within reach of all players. The first player to do that will negate all damage. The last player is going to take 2 extra damage. And at that point, you're going to then assign damage based on the full wound value. So if your wound level is 3 and you only have 2 cubes, crystals, tokens, whatever, you will not actually take a wound. And you're going to do that for all of the wound levels. Now, if you do get all of your wounds depleted, you will be knocked out and you will be able to return to the fight 1 time. To do that, you have to roll the same dice as you would to trigger your power. And all of the ninjas have different abilities, so keep that in mind. And once you trigger your power, you do get a special ability going into the next round. If you're also the first to trigger your power, well, you can then go ahead and do that even if it is already active, because you might not want to take damage. I think I summarized everything.
Yep.
That's probably a little more detailed than normal, but as this game is currently up for pre-order with Japanime Games, you can find a link down below in the video description. We wanted to cover it in depth. So, what time is it now, Julie?
It's time to grab our drinks.
Grab our fellow ninja.
We're going to take it to the table one more time.
One more time. Go ninja, go ninja, go. Go ninja, go ninja, go. Go, go. What? Now we're going to take a quick look at the components for Naruto Ninja Arena. Now we're going to start with the rulebook. I actually have it on camera for a change because we don't have a lot of components. So nice layout to the rulebook. I like the coloring, makes you feel like you're in the world of Naruto. Explanation of the Roll and Clash system, the components, then the rest of the rulebook. Well, up until page 8 are the rules for the game. Page 9 has your 2-player rules, and then what you get after that is the explanation of all of the different ninja powers. So for example, Shadow Clone Jutsu, you can give 3 damage tokens to a player next to you if you're Naruto. So the Wind Style Rasengan, so you may give 2 damage tokens to one player, or 5 damage tokens to a player that has no damage tokens, and you can see what you need to roll, then an explanation as to what your special power is. Now the rest of this rulebook will cover all of the ninjas, so the core game and the Genin expansion that are included in the main box. Now here we've got the damage tokens, and I wanted to put all of them out just so you could see how many there are. You're going to be pushing these at other players as you roll your dice and trigger your abilities. So let's start talking about the ninjas now. We'll pick up the stack. So we've got, of course, Naruto. We talked a little bit about his about his abilities. Powers are right there, which we'll take a look at in a moment. We've got Sasuke, Sakura, You notice at the top they all have different health values. So not all ninjas are created equal, but they also have some strong powers, abilities, and then powers to compensate. Rock Lee, Gaara, well, you can see he doesn't have as much, but there's an ability to believe he can get back into the fight. Hinata, Kiba, Tenten, Shikamaru, Tamari, and that's who's included. So really a lot of the favorite characters from the first arc of Naruto. Now you notice on the back that when you're KO'd, there are instructions as to what you will need to roll in order to get back into the fight. Now, we took a look at the ninjas. Let's take a look at their different powers. So as you can see, it tells you what you need to roll. Then you have to slap the Uzumaki tile. You then flip it over and you get this ability. Now this just gives 1 extra damage to all of your attacks. So Sasuke's is +2 damage. Actually, I'm not sure if this is 1 damage to each attack. You can definitely confirm it in the rule book. It's not that big of a deal, but just want to make sure that everyone you can see what their powers are. Sakura's ability, you get your health all set to 10. Rock Lee's got his 7 gates, and you get the idea. We're not going to go through all of them, but all the different ninjas have their own powers and abilities. And what this means is that the last player to hit the Uzumaki tile will take 2 extra damage. So these are the ninjas that you're going to be selecting. Now here we have the dice that you're going to be rolling for the rolling class system. So as you can see, there are 6 different symbols on the colored dice. There are 6 different symbols on the black dice. And the one that's important to highlight is the spiral, which represents a wild. Now here we have the wound markers. And the last component that we have are 2 special components. Now these work for Tamari and Shikamaru. These are his shadows, so you can have that in the middle that will deal damage. And I'm not too sure exactly what Tamari's ability with her fan is. It's written on her ninja. She's one of the ones that I've not gotten a chance to play yet. But there you have it. These are the components for Naruto Ninja Arena. Now we're going to teach you how to set up the game and then, of course, how to play. Now we're going to take a quick look at how you'd set up Naruto Ninja Arena. I just have some stuff a little more moved over to the left because of the lighting that we have here. So this is an example of a 4-player setup. Now, it is not perfect because I don't have the room for the powers for Rock Lee and Sakura, but it's very simple. Each player is going to pick their ninja. They're going to take their corresponding power. You're going to want to have the damage cubes and the Uzumaki tile within reach of all players. And then you're going to give each player 4 dice, colored ones, and 1 black one, and they will have their dice. Next, what you then need to do is place the wound cubes in the starting locations. And that's it. The game is set up. You are ready to play. Now, if you're going to be setting up for a duel, and during our How to Play, we will be showing you an example of the 2-player duel setup because that is the recommended way to play. What you actually do is you will be selecting 2 ninjas. So in this case, player 1 is Naruto and Rock Lee. Player 2 is going to be Sasuke and Sakura. What you then do is you will have 1 ninja that takes the forward position. You have your wound marker placed in that location. You also want to have a wound marker for your other ninja as well. But then you take the power of your second ninja and you set that up. So essentially, you will be playing this like a standard game. However, you have access to 3 different abilities. So we're going to set up our second player. We will place Sakura's power out. So we have our dice. Let's also grab the dice for the second player. And there we have it. We're now set up for a duel. And we're going to now teach you the game. So keep it right here. As you can see, this is very easy to set up. Now it's time to get into how you're going to be playing the game. Now, how do you play Naruto Ninja Arena? Well, you're going to be rolling dice simultaneously and trying to trigger your abilities. So, as you can see, it can get a little messy when you're rolling the dice, but what you're trying to do is get the combos that are available to you on your characters. And we're going to go over what the visible powers are. We'll also show you how you can change your ninjas when you're playing in this duo mode. So Naruto's power is Shadow Clone, gives 3 damage tokens to a player next to you. So obviously it's only going to be player 2. We've got the Wind Style Rasengan, which is give 2 damage tokens to 1 player, or 5 damage tokens to a player that has no damage. We'll talk about their third powers later on. So Sakura's powers, she's got Substitution Jutsu, which means she can give 1 damage token to 1 player and remove 2 damage tokens from her damage pool. Very powerful. She can also summon clones. Her Clone Jutsu gives 4 damage tokens to a player. Sasuke's power is the Lion Barrage. You give 2 damage tokens to 1 player. He's got Lightning Style Chidori. So you divide 6 damage tokens between the other players and take 1 damage token for yourself. So those are their abilities. Now let's take a look at Rock Lee. He's got a Ferocious Fist, and it depends on what you roll. So you either give 1, 3, or 5 damage tokens to 1 player, depending on your dice result. You give 2 damage tokens, which is Leaf Hurricane, to the players on each side of you. So that's what you're going to be doing. So now let's go over this. We're going to be rolling, and we're going to be rolling quickly. So you can keep any of your dice rolls that show up. So as you know, we want to keep this. That's good. It's also good for Sakura. So we're going to be rolling again. Nope, nothing. Going to be rolling again. Okay, we've got 2. And that's good enough for us to trigger an ability. We might want to start looking at completing our power, but that's a little early. So trigger this, and then we'll take 2 damage tokens, push them towards the other players. Then don't forget they are rolling dice at the same time, trying to trigger their powers. And oh, look, we've got 2 of them here, but we don't want to keep that one. Let's just try to keep rolling until we can get a fist. So you'd be rolling a lot, but boom, we get that. We'll push 5 damage tokens onto the other player. And that's really what you're doing in the game. You're going to be rolling the dice, trying to push as much damage as you can towards the other players. And then finally, and I'm just pushing some stuff randomly, probably won't get to this much damage. Well, if you're playing a 6-player game, anything's possible. Once you get to a certain point, you're going to want to start trying to trigger your power. So what you're going to be then doing is rolling dice until you get the right combination to trigger your power. So as you can see, it's not necessarily all that fast. Actually, I'm going fairly quickly here, but typically it could take a while. But at this point, we'll say that Naruto and Rock Lee were able to trigger Rock Lee's power. So we would tap the Uzumaki tile, and the last player to tap the Uzumaki tile will also take an extra 2 damage. Now in a 2-player game, that's always going to be the other player. In a multiplayer game, that's also very important when it comes to who's KO'd, because you're going to have a lot of different people that have to tap the tile. Now, once you have done that, you will then flip over their tile, and then we'll go over what Rock Lee's power is. So his power is Gate of Opening. So you put 7 damage tokens on your power tile. You add 1 damage token to each of your attacks. You take it from the power tile, but when you lose your power, so that will be when another player then triggers their power in the next round, you take the remaining damage tokens for yourself. So you can take extra damage. So we'll place the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 damage tokens, and we'll have this extra damage to deal. Now, as we were the first to trigger our power and hit the Uzumaki tile, we will take no damage during the round. So the damage is going to be going to Sasuke and Sakura, and what you need to do is calculate the damage in terms of their wounds. So we've got 6 for Sasuke's first level. We've got another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 for a second level. Then we also have another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So at this point, Sasuke is all the way down to his last remaining health. So he's pretty wounded. Now this is something that is only available in duel mode. You have the opportunity to swap the positions of your ninjas. This is why it's the recommended 2-player mode. So you swap your positions of ninjas. Sakura will now take damage. You have different abilities available, and you are going after Sasuke's power and not Sakura's. So play will then continue, and just note that it's only the player that was dealt damage that is able to swap the position of their ninjas. So that's the game. As you can see, it's just a lot of very quick competitive dice rolling simultaneously. You got to smack that tile when you trigger your power, and the last ninja standing wins. What's important to note is there is no opportunity to come back from a KO, and it's whatever ninja gets KO'd. So as you saw there, we did not have enough damage to complete this last 7 on Sasuke last time. We had 4 or 5 left, so he was almost completely KO'd. And these damage go down only by their full amount. Any remaining damage, like you saw, gets cleaned away. So now what happens when a character gets KO'd? So apologies for the quick fade. We were going to take a look at Gaara with regards to coming back from KO, but he's a little different than the other ninjas. As you can see, this is the reverse of his card. So it's not a good explanation point for the KO process. And we really want to cover that so you know what you're doing in multiplayer games. So we're going to take Hinata, for example. So you've been KO'd, meaning you've been dealt all this damage. Your board is now flipped over. You are trying to roll for your power. And when you do, you will slap the Uzumaki tile. Once you do that, you will then refresh your health, and I'll just take a cube here. It will go to the last space. So you will only be able to take 1 more wound. Now, if for whatever reason, when you are KO'd, if you are the last player to hit the Uzumaki tile, you're then just out of the game. You cannot revive yourself. So there you have it. As you can see, the game is fairly straightforward, easy to play, lots of chaos going on. That's Naruto Ninja Arena. Now keep it right here, as Julie and I will be coming back at you with our review of the game. So Naruto Ninja Arena, what did you think of the game?
Well, I don't know the property at all. I can't comment on that.
I know the property, read all the manga, watched some of the anime. Took way too long. That's why I read the manga.
So how does it adapt the story, the manga?
So in terms of adaptation of the characters and creating a free-for-all, well, you don't really see a giant free-for-all battle, at least from what I remember of Naruto. There definitely are multiple ninja battles. It does that very well. Each character is incredibly thematic. Sakura has some healing abilities. Sasuke is able to push a lot of damage, but will also start taking damage himself. When he powers up, he's even able to deal more damage. There's actually one of the things I don't like, because he's triggering his curse ability. And for those that are fans of the anime, you know that he gets black markings on his face. It would have been nice to have seen just a little bit more detail with the powers, that when you trigger them, maybe Sasuke got his black markings, Rock Lee would change. But I definitely feel like they captured the spirit of the anime incredibly well in terms of all of the characters, and the idea of the ninjas battling it out, practicing, that is perfectly in theme with Naruto.
So what I would say, I'll go into the positives and the negatives.
So why don't we start out with the negatives, because I do think the game has quite a bit of positives. I don't think we were necessarily in the position to experience them. That being said, if you do like heads-up dice chucking games, well, you probably want to ignore our opinions. Our opinion on some of the negatives.
So what I would say, you want to start with the negatives, you said. So for me, and Jason and I had discussions about this, he disagrees with me. But for me, the number of different symbols, given the dice chucking game, was difficult for me to manage. I
just wanted to point out that was during duels.
No, just in general.
Okay.
I just found that there's 6 colors. There's a colored dice that has 6 different symbols, and you're rolling 5 of them, and then you're rolling a black dice that has 6 other symbols on it. So depending on the different powers that you have, you can be looking for a lot of different symbols, and it's supposed to move very fast. In fact, it does move very fast. And for me, visually, it was just too much to look for. Now, Jason had a character that was basically multiple of the same symbol, so that definitely makes it easier than what I was trying to look for. But for me and the way my brain works, the rolling of dice and having to look at those the different color symbols and the different, basically 12 different symbols that can come up was not the greatest, I would say, for me, the way my brain works.
The reason why I disagree is because when you're looking at a character, you might only be looking for a small amount of the symbols. Now, you are looking for 5 different symbols for your power. I do believe that it's fairly standard across all characters, so once you've played the game a few times, you're going to know exactly what you're looking for. But for example, if you're playing Naruto, you really are looking for the symbol that looks a lot like the Rasengan and just one other symbol. If you're playing Sasuke, you're looking for 3 symbols, plus whatever you've got for your power. So I didn't really find that to be all that overwhelming. That being said, when you are playing duels and you've got 2 different characters, you can have a lot more symbols that you're trying to manage to potentially trigger powers. And it definitely felt like when we were playing the game in the duel mode, it felt slower. It felt a lot slower just because it's like, oh, what do I do? I've got all these different powers. And while that's going to give you a little bit more complex heads-up 2-player game, I think it's actually not what the rolling clash system is supposed to be. It changed it into a heads-up dice game, and one of the things I really didn't like about that heads-up aspect of the dice game is when you realize that the other opponent's going for their power, you really only have one other option depending on how the damage is going. You have to hit your power first. If you don't, you're going to take all the damage, and that is just really dull and not fun. I didn't like it. I do not recommend this game as a 2-player game. I think that everything that's cool about the rolling clash system does not come out at 2 players. Now, does the system work? Yes. If you really like heads-up dice games, ignore what we said. You'll probably have a good time. But this reminded me a lot of Sailor Moon Dice Challenge. And I'd have to say that I'm not sure which one I like better. I think they're both probably on par. I think maybe I just like this one better because the theme comes across a lot more in terms of what I'm doing than having Sailor Scouts fight and Dice Challenge.
Yeah, I'm not going to repeat what Jason said. We've had the conversation. I agree. It's the same thing. I'm not a huge fan of, heads up dice chucking. I don't like, I've talked about it before from a competitive standpoint. For when I'm playing against Jason, I don't like, heads up competitive games. Just fighting against you. I just don't enjoy it as much. That being said, I can see how this could be fun chaos, multiple players. Unfortunately, in the current pandemic environment, it's not like we can have, friends over to try it out. So I would definitely say I think, this is something we could revisit in several months when we can have other people over and we can play it. I think it's really 4 players and up where it would likely shine.
So let's talk a lot about the rolling clash system and how it works and why we're saying that this needs multiple players. So I've read the rules. I explained it to Julie. She can definitely see the potential. But for example, in a 2-player game, you've got certain powers where you're supposed to be hitting the players opposite of you. Instead, you're only hitting one player. Now, what's going to happen in a multiplayer game of the rolling clash system, you're going to have more options. You could be having a terrible just round of rolls. You could also notice that one player is just taking a lot of damage. They might be close to getting KO'd. You can completely change your strategy, especially if people aren't really paying attention to you, and be the one that tries to lock down your power to KO the other player because everyone else seems to be attacking them. You've got the different abilities that you're going to want to trigger, which are going to have a lot more effect when you're playing against multiple players. Whereas if some powers actually let you assign the damage between everyone that you're fighting against. And at a certain point, you might see people that have like 3 damage, 3 damage, 3 damage. Like, you know what? I want to give them all an extra damage because then they're going to guarantee that they'll take a wound if I can then go for my power. But all of those decisions are not present in a 2-player game.
Agreed. It's really just assigning damage to one other person, and there's not a lot of strategy. It's somebody's going to get injured, and and that's about it.
Yeah, and the really nice thing about the rolling clash system is it's even with more players, because everyone's going to be rolling dice simultaneously. You're going to be very close to that 15-minute play mark, because you're going to be rolling dice, triggering powers, pushing the damage cubes, and then trying to hit your power. And it's going to be very easy, especially with a lot of players. There's going to be a lot of damage going out there. People are going to be getting knocked out within the first, second, and third rounds. And I can see situations where it may end up being a heads-up battle at the end, but I think it's far more likely that the way the game's going to end in a 4 to 6 player game is you're going to probably have like 3 or 4 people get knocked out at the same time, just because of the way the damage gets dealt and the amount of fun people are having. But the cool thing about this is almost like a party game. It reminds me a lot of Robotech Brace for Impact, where they've taken a cool theme, they've made a game around it, but it's not something that you're going to want to take out at your, it's not the main game for your game night. But this is fantastic to play as people are arriving. And the fact that it's 6 players, you can just keep adding people in as you're playing these quick 15-minute games until everyone shows up.
I'd be interested to see the dynamic, given the limited amount of damage cubes or crystals, however you want to look at it. When it's a higher player count, that might come into play as well. When you notice that there's a dwindling amount of damage that can be assigned, then maybe that's the time you want to trigger your power as well. So that could be.
No, I think that's very valid. I was thinking about that because even when we were playing, at one point we were just assigning a lot of damage to each other, and then we're both rolling like, come on, trigger it so that we can deal all the wounds. But that's very valid because the damage pile of only 60 cubes. There are some powers that deal 5 damage. If you have a 5-player game and everyone trigger those rather early, you're already at half the damage cubes available. So you're really going to want to pay attention to that. So there's a lot of these little dynamics that are really going to shine through at the higher player counts.
Yep.
I think we've really covered what we can for the game at the 2-player count. If you do like dice chucking games, you're going to have a lot of fun with this. If you're a Naruto fan and you like the theme and you want to see the theme well represented in a fast-paced competitive game, you got that right here. So there's definitely a lot to like. We're just disappointed we didn't really get to experience it. And I think that summarizes everything you have to say on the game.
So why don't you, since you had so much more to say on this review than I did, why don't you give your...
Well, I read the rules. I read over all the powers. So,
well, we both played it and we both, But
I know, but I get a little bit more insight when I've read the rules, especially to how a game can play. So I'm going to give the game a 6 out of 10 for the moment. The reason for that is that it captures the theme very well. I do give them full credit for having a 2-player mode, and I can see the potential of the rolling clash system. I fully expect that at a higher player count, this probably would have got a 7 from me, got more of a passing grade, but I still just can't be sure as to how I feel about the game. But it's not going to be leaving the collection. I definitely think this is something that we're going to be able to get to the table. I think it's something that even though it says 10 plus, you can probably play this with players much younger if they're used to recognizing dice. Kids can just chuck dice, push damage, have a good time. The physical activity of slapping these Uzumaki tiles is going to be a lot of fun for players of all ages.
So for me, based on the 2-player game that we played, it's a 5.5 on the 2-player game. Mm-hmm. I can, however, see, as we said, what it could be. So I'm going to give my overall score. I'm going to agree with you, and I'm going to call it a 6 overall, based on what I believe would be a fun game at 4 players and above. At 2 players, it's not a passing grade for me, though.
No, and that's one of the challenges of these times with the pandemic, because normally we would easily be able to get someone to play with us. This is also the kind of game that we could have played with your parents, and even though I don't think your dad would have had a great time, I know that your mom likes chucking dice and smiling, and just the act of slapping the tiles, she would have been giggling and having a great time. So lots of good value here. If you're a Naruto fan, you should definitely check it out. If you're a Dice Chicken fan, check it out. Otherwise, if your primary game group is husband and wife, 2 players, probably don't want to pick this one up.
So on that note, it's time to remind you to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell to be notified when we have new content for you.
And take a look down below in the video description. You'll find links to all of our social media feeds, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. So if you would like to see pictures of us playing Naruto Ninja Arena, it'll be all over those feeds. And also in the video description, you'll find a link to our discount code with multizone.ca. You'll get 10% off your next purchase. And why is it there? Well, if you'd like to support the channel, go pick up a game. You'll be supporting a great Quebec game store, as well as supporting the channels. We do get a portion of your purchase back. So lots of cool stuff there. And then popping up in front of me are going to be some videos. Over here, I'll take you back to the cooperative game, Naruto Village Defenders. And in front of us over here will be our most recent release. Decided to change that up this time. So now what do we need to do?
Now we grab our drinks.
Grab our best friend. You know, we're still best friends even though we battled.
We're going to keep playing games.
Keep playing games. Hopefully we can get this to the table with more players soon.
Stupid pandemic.
It's not looking likely.